in the Sifra Ditzniuta. No, if you'd like more, I could get you in touch with my son-in-law or my boss, the guy we call our boss, who's really very knowledgeable. I mean, really, they know everything. Okay, let's see. We were in the middle of the blurb at the top. We have, let's see, a few minutes. So we were going to. I wanted to do number bet in the blurb. Let's read from number Aleph here. Let me just show the page here. It's page Resh Yud Beit for all those people who had the Sefer, which is basically us. Okay, so it says like this, from number Aleph. Bivor ata inyan hamshachas mochen chadashim al yedei bezivug de abba ve'ima hakolam. So we decide whether shehem abba v'Yisrael sava, hamischabrim, the parts of Echad, which we said yesterday, hanikra abba hakolel, and they have a new name. It's called the abba hakolel. Ve'ima v'tevuna hamischabrim, the parts of Echad go together too. Hanikra ima hakoleles. V'yidecha b'mochim chadashim. Now there could be new mochim produced. Elu. Naasa Nesira Zer Venuk, it causes the Nesira. So you need these mochim to make that happen. Va'az, it says Va'az Zer Venuk, let's say Va'az Chosrim Zer Venuk. Let me see, I just lost the place. He says Chosrim Zer Venuk La'amad Panim Bepanim, and that's the whole idea here. So let's see what else he says. Just after number bet, he said, "V'yuvor od ki hiber partzufi abba ve'ima hanal, who sowed his kaulos osius vod and dalid b'os yud shel shem havaya." So he's pointing that out. I don't know what he means by his kaulos. These letters are part of the letter yud itself. Inside of the Yud, so if you look, you open it up, and there's a Milui there, and there's a Vav and Daled, which represents Zachar V'Nog. So that's a relationship. Let's see what he says now. These are the Makoros V'Tziyunim, and as a result, it's really, it can be more technical than the Biurim that we have in the back. This interesting Inyan, though. V'hinech l'chora yesh lomer od, shahare Inyan and the Sira shel Zer V'Nog. He says, "V'zivug abba ve'ima kuvarnis bar la'el." Okay, but Sifra Ditzniuta beperik rishon. Besod is chashcha nukva v'his nehiras ima ein sham. So that's the idea. I don't remember the phrase, but chashcha means it's darker. The nukva is dark. Chashcha becomes dark. V'his nehiras. Ima, then Ima shines into her Ein Sham, I think, the Ba'orach. V'yesh lomer od, the Hosam, over there, Eirech bebriyas ha'olam, shehanesira v'chazaras panim b'panim b'choizer rak lefi Shah. This whole thing only happened at a moment, the moment of creation. Lefi Shah l'tzorag zivug b'chek abba v'ima, and for what reason? It's in order to be able to elevate Zachar v'Nog into the level of Abba Ve'ima in order to be able to make that preliminary yichud. V'gam zibuk Abba Ve'ima hoyu rak laham shachas mochin the bechinas kli. Okay, what's the kli? Aval acher kach, or that's, maybe he means that's just the idea. The idea is the yichud makes it possible for the tipo that maybe we're talking about here to be able to go into the lower section, which is the kli, or the outer section, which is the kli. But after that yichud, after that takes place, he says what? There's a production that takes place here, part of the Nesira, bringing about panim b'panim, making it possible to make the yichud. He says what of the chek abba ve'ima, a yichud that takes place there, and then they go back to their place. Mavur be'etz Chaim explains it like this in Shaar Tal. He calls it Lamed Tesser. In Shaar Tal, Ein Sham, V'rei ba'otzer bi'urim, so we'll get more to that, Le'el be'perik rishon. So he said, Ki be'emes lo nizkar lehedya, inyan hanesira b'sifra ditzniut sham, Elohu nilmad metocha inyan sham v'hainu. That is to say, what is he talking about here exactly? He said, Mishum delo choisa nesira rak lefi sha ein sham. So it's temporal. It happens at a moment. Everything happens, I guess, in the yichud. He's talking about the yichud of the that takes place. I think it's called the yichud ach ba'ach. So they go up to goes up to the lechek of Abba ve'ima. Ba'amnam ikrach on nesira na'asa acher kach, but that's not the real nesira. The real nesira happens after. So that's a momentary situation, which allows for a certain intimacy to take place between Zachar and Nok in the place of Abba ve'ima. But that's as we've seen in many places. He says that this is a preliminary. Va'amnam ikar hanesira na'asa acher kach ha'yederach tefilosav u'masav shal adam arisha. Now this is coining a phrase. It's in other places he says he doesn't use that phrase adam arisha. Let's look back just one more time to just see if I can understand the language that he's using. Amnam ikar hanesira na'asa acher kach ha'yederach tefilosav u'masav shal adam arisha. What's that idea? The answer is that there are mitzvahs that Adam of Rishon could accomplish, which could actually bring out a second yichud, and that would be the real one, or the principal one. And when that happens, then they're going to come back and be panim bepanim. It explains over there in Shaar Lamed Vav. Shaar Hakavanot also he talks about it. The Hainu Rosh Hashanah, so he gives a side reference. But his boyari, so we're explaining the Indian like this, but Bi'urim, later on we're going to see a lot more about this, the El Sham. So he said, V'im came, Yesh Loma, the Sifra de Tzniuta, they're saying that what we have here in the Sifra de Tzniuta Khan, ARI besod Nesira ha'ikris, he calls, so he has, first I'm concerned, I'm interested in why he uses the word Adam Arisha, because I'm assuming that he's talking about us. But he was talking about that's the original, that's the principle. We are Adam Arishon, so I guess that's the principle. Is this what brings us about? So last line he says Ubaotzi Urim. He says, then go on Ve'im Kain Yesh Lomer the Sifra de Tzniuta Kan. When we're talking here about the Sifra de Tzniuta, Iracha Besod Nesira HaIkris Hazo. So that's what he calls it now. This is the Iker Nesira Teda. Shahare kol haperek kam areg episode v'yita havaya elokim is the concept of havaya elokim, which is lashon zachar v'nuk really, but let's see what he means by that. And he planted, that's havaya elokim. So v'kanal b'ha'ara ha'kademis. But pasuk zecha ne'emer la'achar yitziras Adam Arishon. This pasuk is stated after Adam Arishon is created. Commotion Emer Bapasov Kodem Usacha V'Yetzer Avaya Elokim Es Adam, that we had that. Well, here's that word V'Yetzer again. V'Yetzer Avaya Elokim Es Adam. The Shofar Yesh Lomer the Ira Benesira HaIkris, that what this is talking about is this planting, which is that we're talking about. V'Yita Havaya Elokim. Okay, so I'm still thinking, what does Havaya Elokim mean? But let's say that they plant. It could be Abba Ve'ima. You could say maybe awake. You could say that. I'm not sure. So anyway, V'Yetzer Havaya Elokim Es Adam. The Shofar Yesh Lomer the Ira Benesira HaIkris, that is speaking here about the really root Nesira. Shena'ases B'Koach Tivilosov, that is made from the power of the person's prayers. Is what we're talking about now. The Masav Shal Adam Arishon, in other words, that was what he actually was there to create the Yichud, or what is it called, the Nesira HaIkris. And so that was his job. He was doing that. For Ire Khan Bezivug, but we're speaking here about the Zivug of Abba Ve'ima, Laham Shachas Mochas Gemurim, in order to be able to mamshech real mochim. The Tzorach HaNesira HaIkris, for the purpose of what we're talking about, this Nesira HaIkris. V'oz Nischavru Partzufi Abba Ve'ima. Elon v'Yisrael Sabat Tavuna, these two partsufim come completely and totally together. They have to do that. It's like loading the gun, so to speak, is that they have to come together first, and they have to get everything. What do I want to say? I'm not saying exactly right, but they have to get their energy together. The Shnei Partsufim Kolon, they're going to pull everything up, make them into two Partsufim Kolon. V'rei b'ha'aretz lahalon, so we'll see this later on. Shehu sod zivug ava v'ima lahamshech mochim, in order to pour down or bring down mochim lahamshachas binyan kosle acharayim. Let's read this again, one more time. She said, "V'rei b'ha'aretz lahalon." It's going to explain shehu sod zivug v'aba v'ima. There's a yichud between them. Lahamshech mochim, to order to be able to bring the mochim where we're going to bring them, la shlomas binyan kosle acharayim dezocher v'nok. That's the first thing you have to do, kodem nesira, and this all brought in the Eitz Chaim Shaar Ches. Okay, let's look over here and let's see what the actual words are of the Rav and how they're explained by the Kesef Hakavot. And then maybe I think that today we're going to work on this, and that's what we'll do. Let's see where we are. Kad izgalion trin. What does that mean? Kashin izgalo shnei partsufim zer v'nuk. Where are they revealed? I guess they're revealed in that yud. The hainu kasha nigdalu v'nishla b'kumasim. That's what he wants to say. He says that's what it means, that they're grown now, and their height is they're the equal height, or they're at their proper height. Mischadrin b'chad darga. But there's still, that is Zocher v'Nuk, are one entity. Kizer v'Nuk, devukim ach ba'ach, because they're backsides, but koisel echad l'shnehem. This is some of the limud that we know from previously. So when that happens, they're in that situation. They're back to back, one wall. In order to be able to change that situation so that Eve will be, Chava will be separated from Adam and Rishon, let's say, or but that idea, Mochin Chadash and Zer V'Nuk, so they need new Mochin, they need more strength, they need, more nutrition, they need more Mochin. Kedei lahafridem b'soda desira, and the reason why you have to do this is it's not possible for them to be separate. So this concept of them having to be separate, I mean, they start out together. So it's a certain kind of a yichud, actually. They're actually in a yichud. They're the vav and the dal of the yud. But on the other hand, they can't mate. They can't produce anything. So he says, so in order to do that, they have to be face to face. This is the rules that we're given here. Kedei lahafridem. So you have to be able to separate them, the besod hanesira. And then bring them into that state. So you have to combine the lower levels of Abba Ve'ima to the higher levels of Abba Ve'ima, which creates, not getting into the detail of what it creates, but it creates a greater energy. So that energy, therefore, is a Lashon Yichud, bringing them back. I don't know. Chad Rigsha. So there's another interesting idea. They have one feeling. They feel the same. What? They're the same thing. What does that mean? Miskaladim called partsufi abba ve'ima. So we see that they come completely and totally together. Bibachis hargosha achas, the kind of, so he uses word. It's like you don't feel it separate. Is that what it means? I mean, what does it mean? Hargosha achas. But he's using that phrase. So they, in other words, they're like one being, but they're in the wrong positions. So the Haindach of Abba v'Yisrael Sava Mischadrech of the parts of Echad Shehu Abba Hakol Abba Hakol El V'chein Ima V'Sivuna Mischadrech of the parts of Echad, Shehu Ima Hakol Elas V'az Mizdavgim Shnei Partsufim Kololim Elo. So that what happens is there's a yichud that takes place there. The Abba ve'Ima, they lacham shech mochim chadoshim, in order to pour, let's say stream, Mochin chadash and zer v'nuk, and bring them new mochin. So you have to have that. So what happens is that I was trying to describe this, but I didn't do a good job. When you bring the bottom and the top together, that's Abba, and let's say Yisrael Saba, or as we say it, it produces a tremendous amount of energy. This is where I understand it. This is some kind of I don't want to say that it's a yichud because it's not Zohar V'Nog. So, but at any rate, that is what that you have to load it up like that and bring Yisrael Saba up to Saba Saba Tavuna up into Abba V'Ima Eloyin, and that produces an energy. So something like that. The Nuchan the Mavar begin his parsha. Ki partzufi Abba. What does his parsha mean? So that they should become separated. Ki partzufi Abba V'Ima Kolim Mischavrim Rak Kadei L'Seis Mochin Ezer V'Nok. Kedei lahafrid as their anpin mechanukva b'soda desirat, in order to be able to do that. So he says aval la'acho holedes hamochin. So, but after the mochim are born out, now you have this. Okay, heim chozin the bechinas hakodemis. They go back. So I'm thinking that they come together, they produce this energy. We'll call them mochim. Then they have to distribute the energy into Zohar V'Nuk. I think that's what happens, and as a result of that, they have to go back to the original position because it's Yisrael Saba Tavuna that actually goes into. That's what I think, Zohar V'Nuk. So he said, "Hey, mechozin the bechinas hakodemis shel arba partzufim, which are shehem Abba V'Ima Eloyin v'Yisrael Saba Tavuna." Now, this chibur that we talked about of the Abba and Yisrael Saba, the parts of Echad, V'Ima V'Devuna, the parts of Echad. Now, this he says is Vav Dal Kalila B'Yud. What is this all about? If it's taking place where they all come together, then what you're doing is I try to figure out what this metaphor is. We know that the Vav Dal is Zohar V'Nuk, and it's part of the Yud. So he's saying that they bring in, let me read it again. The parts of Echad, V'Ima V'Tevuna, the parts of Echad, is the same concept as the Vav Dal Kalila B'Yud, which is part of that. Now how does it work? So he says so his Kalus Osius Vav Dalit, and explains. He says that this is the corporation of these two letters, Ba'os Yud, into the Os Yud. In other words, it's a part of the concept of the Yud. So what is it? The Yud means Abba V'Ima HaKololim, represent the Yud, I guess. And then you see there's a Vav, then they have a Shefa right there with them to be mashpia to the Vav Dalad right there. V'ha'inyan huki or Yud, Os Yud, Shel Shem Havaya, who besode parts of Abba V'Ima Eloyin. Oh, that's what I said. I read this before, so no great insight here. He said, "Who besod partzufi Abba V'Ima Eloyin." That's what that is. That's that Yud. That Yud is the upper. It's Chachma. That's the Chachma relative to Yisrael Saba Tavuna. Yud Peshuta Romez the Abba. V'Osius Milui Vav Dal Romez the Ima Elor, that she has these two, I guess, in her womb, so to speak. Ki Osius Vav Dalad, because the letters that are Vav Dalad. Na'asa the tzuras os hey, you could see how that you could betzir dalid al vav, which is the formation that we've seen in the Otis Chaim and many other places. You could make vav and dalid into a hey. Betzir hey shall vav dalid, so the form that you get out of that vav dalid, who imi law, that's imi law. Vav and dalid are actually imi law. I don't know how that works exactly. I'm still thinking about it. Who hey shall shem avaya, and that's your upper hey. That's the hey in the name of Avaya. Who besod partzufa Yisrael Saba Tavuna, and it actually refers to that partzuf. I think that we're saying that the top part is a yud. So the Abba part is a yud. It has a vav dalad, and it goes into the nuk. I'm trying to read this, understand this a little bit better. Okay, we'll go on. Ki ha'ukutz shel ha'os ha'yud. So there's a little tip on the right corner, but b'tzad yamin romez the Yisrael Saba. It really is a remez to Yisrael Saba. Ve'etzem os hey, but the etzem, the root, I guess the basic hey, Rome is the tavuna. So you have, this is the same kind of idea that we've seen this idea before. Abba is represented as something very small. It's really the source of all of the energy. It's going to go into Ima, and he's on the right corner, right upper corner. But the body of the letter Hey itself is where that Yud is coming into from that right upper corner, my thinking. Mitzad Yamin, Rome is the Yisrael Sava. Ve'etzem, the Os Hey, Rome is the Tavuna, V'hine be'esa zivug. Now let's say the zivug, the holed is a malchut. Shemischadrim kol apartzufim yachad b'sod Abba ve'ima. So now you have everything together in one powerful punch. Hakol lemanal. Az nichlal os hey shel shem avaya b'milui vav dala. Then the language here is that then becomes incorporated. The letter hey is being composed of the letters of vav and dalad shel os yud. So this idea of the yud being the he calls it the uketz of the hey is the same thing. You see that you have the yud, and then the vav dalad forms itself, which is first, and then the vav dalad which makes itself into a hey, and you attach the yud is attached to it. Shehud suras os hey b'tzir dalad al vav kanal. So obviously there's a lot here. So to see v'nimsa ki os hey haromas the partzufa Yisrael Sava v'tzavuna nichlal b'milui. It becomes incorporated into the milui, which is the vav and dalad haromas the ima ilua, which is represented by which is a representation of ima ilua. One more time. He said the partzufa v'Yisrael Sava v'tzavuna nichlal b'milui. They become a part. So this is nechlalim, because the reason why I'm having trouble with this is because they're a second generated. In other words, first you have a yud, then you look inside of it, and then it's a vav daled. Now he says that the partzuf and the Yisrael Sava Tavuna nechlalim b'vav daled haromas the imay law, which represents imay law. So it is that what was generated before. He's saying like this. Let's say there was originally an Abba ve'ima only, and then there was an extension of them, which is called Yisrael Sava Tavuna. This took place before the point that we're talking about right now, that there's an Abba ve'ima and there's Yisrael Sava Tavuna. They need to, one, they're there, and two, they need to they come together. And when you move it up, this is what happens. It causes the let's read again, the vav dalad to become a part of which is a hey, to be part of the yud. Peshuta, Harom is the Abba, which remembers the Abba. So now you're moving everything back to where that it originally was. Everything came out of Abba, because Abba breathes or into Ima. And in this way we're bringing all the four partsufim together. B'shorshim ba'os yud vav dalad, and now you have them all back together. So this is actually the creation of that energy. So you're taking the separate little pieces and you're making them into one piece, which is the letter yud. V'oz na'asim shnei partsufim abba ve'ima hakolim, and when that happens, you have these two big partsufim. Ki Abba v'Yisrael Sava na'aseh parts of Echad, ve'Ima b'Tavuna na'aseh parts of Echad. They become one part of Oz Hem is Davgim. So then you have the possibility that Yichud, here it is, Kedei lahamshech hamochin letzorach ha-nesira, in order to be able to mochim for purpose of the nesira. Okay, well that's it today. So we'll see you tomorrow. We'll see what's next. Kol Tov.